Hello, this is Yuri with WP Soar. I'm going to go over sitemaps today. Now, sitemaps are ways for Google and other crawlers to identify how your site's structured and how pages are related. And WordPress comes with a bunch of really annoying features with when you install a sitemap first. And there's certain ways to configure it so that you can have it set the way you want it to be set. Now, of course, it's a very convenient system nonetheless, but you do have to configure it in order for it to make sense for the search engines, because there's certain things that you just don't necessarily need in your sitemap. Let's begin. First off, I recommend using a plugin called Yoast SEO. This is probably the best SEO plugin available. Now, there's other people who would argue against it, and they would consider other SEO plugins because of the recent updates. However, I really like Yoast SEO. It's been really good for my pages, and it's ranked my sites pretty well. So we're going to go ahead and activate Yoast SEO, and we're going to check out the XML sitemaps portion. Now, in this, you'll see either you have enable or disable the sitemap functionality. It's pretty simple. And here you're going to have the max entries. The max entries is defaulted at 1,000. And if you have more than 1,000 pieces of content on your site, you can always have additional sitemaps, or you can have additional entries right here. There's no real restriction on how many items you can have in here. And this is really just a standard, default setting. So we're going to go ahead and navigate to the user sitemap and enable it. Now, user sitemaps are ways for the content to be distributed per user, and you don't necessarily need it because you're going to have multiple ways to administer the content and access the content through categories, tags, etc., or directly through the sitemap. So you don't necessarily need to have an author sitemap as well. And the user sitemap here, you'll have administrator, editor, author, contributor. You don't really need these roles in the sitemap. In fact, you probably don't want to have any users displayed, because if you're using other membership plugins or if you're using other plugins that display user data, maybe you don't want to necessarily include this in the sitemap for all to see. So we're going to go ahead and disable the author user sitemap because really it's not 100% necessary. This is totally optional. It's just archives again, and there's so many ways to access the data. Google and other search engines really just need to see the data and how it's outlined. They don't need to see all the entry points. That doesn't mean it's not going to be indexed. It's just not included in the sitemap. Now here we're going to see post types. Now in this area, you want to be careful because post, pages, media, these are considered post types. They're identified with IDs in the database. Now with the post types, sometimes if you add a plugin or a theme, you will have different post types than everybody else. Sometimes if you add a new plugin, it might add a new post type, especially if you're adding a custom post type plugin. And it's your choice to include them or not include those types of posts in the sitemap. In this case, we're gonna leave it as a default setting, but you can have you don't really need the media settings here. You don't need all the images accessible through the sitemap because it's frankly cumbersome, and you just don't need the media attachments in there. It doesn't need to be in the sitemap. And then here we go to the excluded posts. The post IDs can be found by clicking on posts or pages, and posts and pages again are treated the same with the ID. We click on, we can actually just hover over, and at the very bottom you'll see the post equals. You can also just go to the edit button, and you'll see at the very top post equals 81. So this post ID is 81. If we want to exclude it from the sitemap, we simply put it right there. And again, this is a great way to hide pages and posts that you don't necessarily want the search engines to see. Things like that come standard with WooCommerce or membership plugins, just standard pages that are installed. You don't necessarily need to have all the pages displayed all the time. So then we go navigate over to the taxonomies, and we'll see categories and tags. So this again is optional. You don't need to have every single way of accessing the same content through multiple channels. In my preference, I'll just have one, and that'll be categories. Categories, tags, and other taxonomies will be added. There will be other things added with your themes and plugins again, so you would want to exclude these from your sitemap. You don't need to have all of your taxonomies represented in your sitemap. You only need to have the most relevant ones, and that would be your content, posts, pages, podcasts, etc. And so we'll navigate over to a real sitemap, a live sitemap. We'll take a look at what it looks like. So here's our WP Soar sitemap. If you look at the post sitemap, you'll notice that there's only one post in here. That was our weekly post, and here's our first post for the week, and you'll notice that's the only thing that's included here. Okay, so we'll go ahead and navigate to the page sitemap, and you notice all of our pages here represented in the sitemap. Okay. And again, it's the same for your podcast, your categories, your support videos, and your support video sitemap, and your series. Series are related to the podcast because you can actually have sub categories under podcast, just like you can have subcategories under your custom post types. In this case, support videos are a custom post type. You can have additional categories within that custom post type. So it's treated as a custom post that has its own set of categories. So there's more than one way to access that type of content. And for sitemaps, that's pretty much it. If you have any other additional questions, please visit wpsoar.com and we will happily answer any questions. If you'd like us to make a different video, just let us know.